100という数字だと思いますんで、次は200目指したいなというふうな思いも当然ながらありまして、プロの選手としてそれだけ常に高いパフォーマンスを示し続けたいという僕の気持ちがまた次は200目指そうというところに含まれているというふうに理解していただいて、頑張りたいなと思います。やっぱり逃げ切って僕は勝ちたいですね、ポール取って。それが一番速い証明だと思うんで、
Getting the pole is always the biggest proof of how quick you are. So that's the thing that I'm really focused on today. And there is the cake that Jake mentioned earlier.
There's no way he attacked that on his own. Thank goodness he's got a big Team Mugen squad.
I think
because
he had quite a few hungry mechanics and engineers to help him, because it was a late night yesterday. We didn't get the official results until 10 p.m. As we see, there is the list, the 100 Races Club. Nojiri becomes the 9th member. He's 20. Well, after today, he'll be 25 starts away from Satoshi Motoyama, who of course tops that list.
And as we mentioned already, if he wants to get to 200 races, he's got to still be on the grid in 2033. So this is the weekend for Team Mugen drivers making wildly ambitious statements, isn't it? Because we had that one from Najiri yesterday, I want to get to 200, and Ayumu Arasa on Friday told everybody, I'm going to win every race this season, which yesterday immediately turned out to be incorrect.
Yes, I did think when he said that, was actually at the pre-season test he said that, but I did think, well, you're sort of setting yourself up for failure there, no matter how good a driver is. Winning every single race is just something that you can't, you know, when has that ever happened? I mean, the closest anybody came, I guess, was probably Terasuke Takagi back in 2000. I think he won 8 out of 10, if I remember correctly, which, if that happens again in the modern era, of course, very different times then. We had different chassis, we had different engine tuners, as we see the list again. Sorry, Takashi Kagure topping the list, not Motoyama. Motoyama's in P2, so my apologies there. Of course, that only counts the modern era from 1996 onwards, so I'm sure there'll be plenty of you at home jumping up and down and saying, where's Kazuyoshi Hoshino on that list? Well, yes, sadly, he doesn't count on the official records, but in our hearts, of course, he is number 1.
Yes, indeed. Of course, the F2000 champion in 1975 and 77, and then the Formula 2 Japan champion of 78, and then, of course, the F3000 champion of 1987, 1990, and 1993. It is astonishing. Hoshino-san's longevity as a driver, just completely unfathomed. I'm assuming that is essentially what Tomoka Nijiri wants to replicate, but I think it's just going to be so difficult in the modern era when you've got half a second covering the top 12 drivers in Q1, Q2.
Hard to make out, but I did hear the word engine there at the beginning. So obviously the issues that Iwasa and who was the other driver, Koide, faced, it didn't stop them from getting through. So I can only presume that as the kind of maybe the dry air sort of worked its way through the system, maybe it cured whatever was ailing those engines, and it wasn't too much of a problem in the end. Of course, it was a Toyota engine driver who went quickest though, so maybe it's still something of an opportunity for the Toyota contingent to try and get one back over their big rival at Honda. Of course, they have the numeric superiority on this bumper grid with 14 cars. Honda has 10, so the dice are slightly stacked in Toyota's favour. But of course, yesterday that didn't stop Honda from locking out 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 on their home circuit.
Indeed it didn't. We've got 12 more drivers to go at it for Q1 Group B. Tomoka Nijiri going for pole position number 24. Kakuno Shinota, Kamui Kobayashi, Seita Nanaka, the Brits, Luke Browning and Zach O'Sullivan, Nobu Matsushita, Sasha Fenestraz, Sena Sakaguchi, Yuto Nomura, the new boy, Charlie Wirtz, the rookie, and Ren Sato, the man who everybody is going to be keeping an eye on to see if he can put himself onto the front row of the grid for the first time since his first race weekend. That's quite an incredible statistic, isn't it? Kakuno Shinota, race winner yesterday, hoping for another one, which will put him on 8 victories, and that will put him into 10th position on the all-time wins list since Formula Nippon began in 1996. And that will mean he will be the most successful driver in Super Formula history not to win the title.
That's an interesting stat, and I love the stat that Orta actually volunteered yesterday in the Parc Fermé interview after qualifying, that he's only ever qualified second at Motegi. Will that streak continue? So that's 5 qualifying appearances and 5 times second. Moroka-san doesn't understand either. So let's see if Orta can finally break that jinx, either getting on pole. And Ren Sato as well. We talked yesterday in the qualifying broadcast about how frustrated he looked. He's got out of the car. Charlie Verts has been off. Where's that? Which corner is that? It's the final corner. Ooh, almost getting in the way of Yuta Nomura there, but looks like he's managed to recover it okay, but not what Charlie Verts needs.
And certainly an opportunity wasted there on this set of tyres. Mind you, we're still in the warm-up phase, essentially, of these tyres, although actually he may have already come into the pits and changed them, so this could be the quali tyre. So that's almost certainly a big knock to the scalp of Charlie Verts. While I was looking at the stats, actually, keeping an eye on the progress of Zach O'Sullivan and Luke Browning, I noticed that we've waited a long time for British success in Super Formula. We've got 2 Brits on the grid, and let's not forget that we're still actually waiting for an Englishman to take a victory or a pole position in Super Formula in the modern era, because of course we've had 3 drivers from Great Britain get a pole position. Technically one of those could be dubbed as an Irishman, because of course Ralph Furman carried the Irish license for the majority of his career, although of course he was based in Great Britain for the majority of it. So
yeah, wasn't he born in Norfolk? So I think
he was born in Norfolk. Yeah, he was born in Norfolk, although he ran to an Irish license. If you're counting Ralph, then he is the only Englishman ever to get a win or a pole position. Let's see what happened to Charlie Verts.
Ooh.
Whoa! That is big snap of oversteer.
Wow.
Well saved, actually. Well saved. That could have been much, much worse.
Quite an unusual place to have an off. So he's coming through this left-hander here. He loses it well before. So that's not what the driver would expect. That's not going to be very confidence-inspiring, is it, for the remaining few minutes of this session? So hopefully that doesn't prove too much of a hindrance for Charlie as he approaches the same corner for a second time. And I think now we're seeing the first proper push laps of this session. Luke Browning currently leading on a 1:33.6, but the track is clearly getting faster. And one more point I'll make just before we get into the nitty-gritty of the fast laps coming in. I think the drivers in Group B, even more so than usual, are going to have a big advantage in Q2 because the track is changing so quickly.
Yes, I agree with you. I think Group B is definitely going to be quicker than Group A was. Luke Browning currently sat in provisional pole position. He would be the first Englishman since Ralph Furman to get a pole position if he were to do it, because the only other 2 Brits to ever get a pole position are Peter Dunbreck, a very proud Scotsman, and Richard Lyons, who of course is from Northern Ireland. So it could be a historic day if either Luke Browning or Zach O'Sullivan get the pole position, because they would be the first Englishman since Ralph Furman, if we're going to count Ralph as English, because of course we could well do, to get the job done. But he's already been displaced by both Ren Sato and now Kakunoshi Notta, who gets a 1:31.2, which is already comparable to what we saw in Q1
faster.
Group A. And it is faster. I think we're going to go faster still. We're going to go faster still as well, as Luke Browning gets a 1:32.2. So he's a second away from that in second place. Just watch, this is going to tumble. The times are going to absolutely shovel their way down the bottom of the barrel. Here's Luke.
Time for 2 more push laps. So 5, then final push.
There we go. That's the strategy for Kondo. No need to translate that one. Kakunoshi Notta, purple sector 1, 23.0. This could well get into the 1:30 lows. We may even get a 1:29 now that the track is going very quick.
Yeah, could we perhaps see the record that Ayumu Iwasa just fell slightly short of yesterday? He fell a 10th short in Q2. Are we going to see that being challenged again this morning? I'd kind of given up hope after it started raining because I thought the track would be too green, there wouldn't be enough grip. Kakunoshi Notta is going for 2 consecutive push laps here, and that front left was already quite toasty when we saw the graphic on the previous lap. He hasn't improved his best third sector. Let's see what he does through Victory Corner. Will there be any hint of a slide? I think there was a little bit there, so I'm not sure if this will be an improvement, but 2 consecutive push laps I think is maybe not the best way to go for. Well, he does improve.
1:31.1.
Well, pardon me.
Go. Just managing it. That third sector was a little bit wobbly though, so I totally understand why you felt maybe it wasn't going to be quicker, but well, it just shows you how quick the track is getting. Here is Senna Sekiguchi. We saw Toshiki Oyu fighting his way and getting through. So now let's see if the second in-game car can make it into Q2. It's going to be tight for Senna Sakaguchi, but will he go quicker than Fenestraz? Yes, he does, second. So into second place then goes Senna Sakaguchi on a 1:31.57. Sato currently third from Browning, Najiri and Fenestraz. Here is the man on the plan, Ren Sato, desperate to get onto the front row of the starting grid minimum. Compared to what he usually gets. Kamui Kobayashi gets a 1:31.9. That's much better than yesterday. So Kamui Kobayashi didn't set a representative time yesterday. He was given permission to start. O'Sullivan, 1:31.7. Very good work indeed from the Impul. As Nomura goes top 6, that pushes Browning out, and Matsushita gets a 1:31.9. That's great from the Delight Works driver. Here comes Ren Sato across the line. He can do one more push lap. Does he go top? 1:31.6. That's third. So that'll be disappointing for Ren Sato. He'll want more than that. Fenestraz is on a quick lap. He's purple in Sector 1, personal best in Sector 2.
Yeah, Fenestraz saving his best for last because his best lap up to now is a 1:34, so clearly he hasn't done a proper push lap yet. He's saving it all for the final attempt, which is the kind of the traditional style in Super Formula, but what we've seen so far this weekend is very different from that. Tomoki Nojiri, the pole maestro himself, seems to have gone for something similar. Where's it going to put him? It's going to put him second, so that's a good effort there from Tomoki Nojiri.
1:31.2. Browning's bailed out. He's not going to improve on a 1:32.2, so he's eliminated, sadly. Across the line comes Fenestraz. He goes third, 1:31.4. And we wait to see if Sakaguchi goes better. He does, 1:31.3. Sakaguchi, I tell you what, Inging really have done their homework overnight, haven't they? Yuto Nomura, purple in Sector 2. This absolute prodigy could well put himself into the top 2 here, never mind the top 6. As across the line, Seita Nanaka's already completed his run. He's not going to improve. There goes O'Sullivan. He goes 1:31.4. Great work from the Brit. That's very quick. What about Yuto Nomura? Can he get through? Yes, 1:31.4. Very good work indeed from Nomura. Matsushita, he just misses out. 1:31.53. Charlie Wirtz, final attempt, final chance. 1:32.3. Really unfortunate. That off clearly did a damage. Ren Sato, third again. This only Q1. And Fenestraz is out. Well, that's another big scalp. Kobayashi out, Matsushita out, and Seita Nanaka out. It's incredible. Fenestraz and Matsushita out. They're 0.3 of a second off the top spot, and that's still not good enough to get through.
Amazing, isn't it? And Matsushita also within 0.4 of the top spot. I think if you told any driver that they're going to be within 0.4 of the top time in Q1, they'd be pretty certain of making it through to Q2, but sadly not. All the others a little bit far away. I have to say though, Charlie Wirtz to come so close to Luke Browning's time, even though he had that off that we saw earlier on, not a bad effort at all. He probably could have gone quicker had he not had that issue. So I think that's a job well done from Charlie Wirtz to be within 1.1 seconds away, but Luke Browning, he'll be disappointed. He'll be very disappointed, I think.
Yeah, I think there was definitely more pace in the car. There was a lot more pace in him, but it just hasn't worked out on the qualifying today. So it's going to be a long day at the office for Luke Browning, but Atlassian Williams and Luke Browning both said, look, we've signed up for that. We know it's going to be a tough season. This is to see what we can do in adversity. They know it's going to be a tough season. They know it's going to be a trying time. It's a trying time at Kondo, full stop, in 2026. So they know what to expect. It's almost as if business has been resumed, though, of course, because all 3 of the Kondo drivers technically have now not made it through. Otta has, Najiri, Sato, Sakaguchi, Yuto Nomura, and Zach O'Sullivan. Very impressive from the Impul team and driver. Fenestraz out, Matsushita out, Kobayashi, Nanaka, Browning and Wirtz all out. Big drama there for Sasha Fenestraz. That is not good news. He really wanted to fight for the title in 2026, and that does not bode well.
Nojiri saying, I didn't have any power, but it didn't stop him from being P2 in that session. I was just checking, actually. I don't think Impul actually got any of its cars into either its 2 cars into Q2 the whole of last year. Takaboshi's best qualifying effort was 14th. For Rasmussen, it was 15th, and I don't think either of the stand-in drivers achieved any better than that either. So for Impel. This is the first Q2 appearance, I think, since 2024, since mid-2024. So well done, Zach O'Sullivan. That's exactly what Kazuki Hoshino was talking about. I had a very nice discussion with Hoshino-san over the winter, and he sort of spelled out why they chose Zach, and he said it was the pre-season test, that very first test he did, sorry, the post-season test in 24, when he jumped in the Kondo racing car on the final day, went quicker than both Ukyo Sasahara and Juan Manuel Correa, who had driven the car in the 2 days prior, and Hoshino-san was watching at the S's, and he said, that kid's pretty good, I'm going to keep an eye on him. And then a year later, he manages to get his signature to join Team Impel.
So very impressive work, and now as the lone Impel driver, that's a tough season for Zach O'Sullivan ahead, and to get through into Q2 under the circumstances when Impel were nowhere last year, with talent as well. Let's not forget the fact they did have some strong drivers in the field last year. Mitsunori Takaboshi was in the team last year, albeit getting a Damon Hill-style late call-up for Super Formula. But he's not a slouch. You know, Takaboshi is one of the best Super GT drivers currently on the grid. And so Impel had a horrible year in 2025 under difficult circumstances. So for Zach O'Sullivan to join the team afresh as a lone driver, which is a long, long time since Impel only had one car on the grid, and to put it through into Q2 on merit, on pace, that's very admirable indeed.
While we're on the subject of stats, I'm sort of looking back through my various spreadsheets to try and find the last time that Tasuke Makino qualified solo down the order, and to be honest, I'm struggling to find, because he's 18th on the grid with the 9th fastest time in Group A. That may be his worst ever. I don't have the stats for his debut season in 2019, but certainly this decade it is Makino's worst grid slot ever. So that's quite the shock for the driver that was not far away. We didn't really talk about him as being one of the sort of prime contenders for the title, but he wasn't far off. He could have well been right in the mix without that bad luck he had with the safety car in the very first race of the season. But it just goes to show how difficult Super Formula is.
Yeah, okay, man. Everybody looks like a struggling, you know, like only 2 tenths or maybe 3 tenths away from the top. So, yeah, but we should do something here.
Just looking through, I can confirm it is indeed Tadasuke Makino's worst ever grid performance. Prior to that, he had been 15th on the grid 3 times. So yeah, 18th position is officially the lowest grid position Tadasuke Makino's ever had in the sport. So that is very disappointing. Let's look at the comparison laps here between Ayumu Iwasa of Team Mugen and Sasha Fenestraz of Team Toms. This is actually yesterday. So this gives you an indication of the two drivers on yesterday's track conditions. This is in the round 1 qualifying session. Always fascinating to me to look at two drivers taking on the same racetrack in the same chassis in completely different fashions. Look at the style of Sasha Fenestraz compared to Iwasa. Iwasa is very smooth. Fenestraz a little bit more of an attacker, but it's the fluidity of the steering input, Jamie, that's fascinating to watch here. There's only a couple of tenths of a second between them, but you can really see in the way they handle the car. That makes all the difference around this place.
Iwasa seems to be using quite a bit more curb, from what I can tell, than Fenestraz. I couldn't tell you why that was. You'd assume that there would be a sort of a default line to take around pretty much all the corners here. It is a very, Fenestraz going for a much later apex there in the hairpin. That was very interesting to see the difference there, maybe. But you've got the two different engine characteristics as well. I have heard of drivers sort of adjusting their lines, adjusting their styles slightly, just to try and get the best from the engine. You can see Iwasa already a little bit ahead here, maybe a couple of tenths or so, but it is visible. He arrives at that penultimate apex quite a bit before. Iwasa did have a bit of a slide coming out of the last corner, but it didn't appear to cost him too much time, and that was the lap that gave him pole position yesterday. Fenestraz, I think, was the second best of the Toyotas after Nirei Fukuzumi, who sadly was disqualified from qualifying for being underweight. Hopefully that won't happen again today. Here is Kazuki Hoshino, son of the legendary Kazuyoshi.
6位で喜んでちゃいけないんだと思うんだけどね、結構久々だったんでちょっと嬉しいね。
I'm very happy because it's our first time in Q2 in a long time. You can tell by the smile on his face.
本場 Q2 とあとはまあレースなんで、本当落ち着いて戦いたいなと。とりあえずね、もう久々だったんで、今嬉しいですけど、ちょっともう一回ここで仕切り直して Q2 それから午後のレースと頑張りたいと思ってます。はい。
我々も応援してます。Focus on the race, not get too carried away by qualifying, but just happy to be back in Q2 for the first time since the middle of the 2024 season. It really has been. We thought that the Impul had hit rock bottom in 2024 when Teo Pourchaire had quit the team after one race. It turned out they had further to fall, and now partly as a consequence of that, down to just the single car for Zach O'Sullivan. But in some ways, it's a huge vote of confidence. It would have been very easy for Impul to just keep one of Takaboshi, especially Takaboshi, being better in years with the links to Nissan. Of course, Impul has a long history with Nissan in Super GT. It would have been very easy just to keep Takaboshi in the car and go, well, maybe it's the team's problem. But actually, Hoshino-san's opinion was, no, we believe the package was improving. The drivers didn't get the best out of the package. We need a new driver. Zach's my man. I'm going to go get him. And that's what he did.
And that's Hoshino's style bravery, isn't it? And it has paid off. I mean, we're only in the first weekend, and Impul are back in Q2. Great to see. Right, yesterday, Q2 were covered by half a second. Today, I don't think it's going to be any different, and it is going to be very tricky to know who's going to get the pole position. We've got only the two Mugans and the two Ingings this time. Every other team has only got one representative, either because only one car made it through, or they're only a one-car team. But it is astonishing to see that we've only got one of the Dandelions, Makino, out, one of the Nakajimas, Braga out, and one of the Toms, Fenestraz, out. It's a very different day.
Yeah, because we had the four top teams, which I think it's if you're a regular follower, you'll know that we mean by that Team Mugen, Dandelion Racing, Toms, and now Nakajima Racing from kind of the end of last year onwards. As we see Shota Boy prepared, he's the last guy to leave the pits, but only Team Mugen getting both cars in, and Ceramo Inging, which a team that we haven't discussed too much in the build-up, and of course they had a pretty disappointing day yesterday with neither of their cars getting through to Q2. So it's got quite a different feel to it. KCMG as well, we didn't see them in Q2 yesterday, with Kenty Yamashita making it through this time, and we know he is capable of a fearsome turn of speed around this particular circuit. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing what he can do when it's time to put your cards on the table.
So when it comes to pole positions, this man is obviously the pretender to the crown at the moment. Ayumu Iwasa currently has 5 pole positions to his name, which is the same as Tadasuke Makino. Only Tomoka Tajiri on the current grid has more pole positions. So this could be Ayumu Iwasa's chance to go into second of the current grid list. It would still be quite a long way down the all-time list. But if he gets pole position, he would go level with Yui Sakaguchi, Takeshi Tsuchiya, and Ralph Furman on 6 pole positions apiece. So a little bit of history there to be made. Shota Tsuboi venturing out onto the starting grid. It is crackers, absolutely crackers, to think that in his career, Shota Tsuboi has only been on pole twice. That's balmy.
That is the difference between, you know, the Honda engines have had a good run of things in qualifying over recent years. I think if you actually look at the number of Toyota powered drivers that have scored pole positions, it's not that many in the last few years. So I think that probably tells you some of the story. Of course, we saw that yesterday. Nirei Fukuzumi was the top Toyota powered car. I would not be surprised at all to see Fukuzumi on pole or very close, given how quick he was yesterday. Rookie Racing seems to be really coalescing nicely around its new star driver. Of course, Oshima is still there helping the team. Ishiura-san, Hiroaki Ishiura, the 2-time Super Formula champion, knows all about success in this category. Also with the team this weekend, and will be with the team for several races this year, is Ryan Dingle, the Canadian engineer, best known as the voice trying to soothe Sebastian Buemi in the World Endurance Championship in the number 8 Toyota GR10 Hybrid, now the TR10 Hybrid this year. He's back for selected races, including this weekend. So it is a very strong core group of personnel, of course, all overseen by Akio Toyoda himself.
Remind me, Jamie, what is the highest grid position so far for the Docomo Business rookie car? It's never been on the front row before, has it?
well, it would have been fourth if they weren't disqualified.
Indeed.
Give me a moment to come back with you with a more detailed answer.
But they've certainly never been on the front row of the grid as,
No.
well, Sasha Fenestraz watches on, wondering what might have been. This was not the 2026 attack he wanted, and he can't even raise a smile for the cameras. Raised eyebrows are all that he gives us, as, well, the Argentine's title attack has taken a big scalp there for his teammate Shotsu Boy to make it through and for Sasha to be on the sidelines. But then you could say that too about Igor Fraga. What a dramatic turn of events for him not to make it through. And also, fairly dramatic that Tanosuke Makino's not made it through with his worst ever grid position coming up later. 18th on the grid is where he's set to start from, provided there are no penalties. But even so, big drama for one side of the garage at Dandelion, Nakajima and Tom's.
I think to answer your earlier question, I think it's 8th is the best grid slot that Oshima achieved for rookie racing. So I think for Kazumi, yeah, well, he should have achieved that yesterday. I'd be fairly happy to predict that he'll clear 8th in this particular qualifying session based on the fact he was fastest in Group A earlier in Q1. You see Kakenoshi Nota slowing down to try, and you don't want to overheat the tyres. It's a delicate balancing act as we see Ren Sato's come across the line. Only a 34.1, so we're still way off the pace. But now we might be starting to get to the first, maybe a banker lap, then do a cool down. We saw that work very well for Iwasa yesterday, didn't we? He seemed to go very early for his first push, as we see the unusual sight of Igor Fraga having to be reduced to the role of spectator for Q2. Wonder what's going through his mind at the moment. But that's what worked well for Iwasa. He went with a very slow cool-down lap and just gave himself just enough time to get back on the throttle in time for his final push lap, and it worked beautifully.
So apart from the big names on this Q2 lineup that we would expect to see push for pole, Ren Sato potentially a first pole position in the offing, Shotsu Boy clearly in the fight for it, both the Mugans, Tomoka Najiri and Ayumu Iwasa, and of course Kakenoshi Nota. I would keep an eye on the Ingings. Sena Sakaguchi and Toshiki Oyu may have something special here. Kenti Yamashita, circuit specialist, could well come up with the goods for a front row at the very minimum, if not a pole position. We've got to keep an eye on Fukuzumi because obviously that pace in Q1 is definitely not to be denied. And I would venture there may even be something special from Yuta Nomura. There could be something spectacular from the new boy.
Yeah, well, he was P5 yesterday, which is already a very, very good start. And he is clearly the real deal. Bit of a shame yesterday that he lost those positions with the engine issues he was experiencing, because fourth would have been a really good result for VMAX Racing. Of course, it's been a tough couple of years. Shunkoide last year, Iori Kimura the year before. You have to really go back to when Nobuhara Matsushita actually won that racing. That was the last time they were on the podium. But for certainly, if you would be willing to bet now that Nomura should be a contender for a podium at some point this year, if not today. Really, really impressive from the Super Formula Lights champion. Let's see what Ayumu Iwasa does as he crosses the line. It's a 1:33.2 to beat from Ren Sato. Now Kakenoshi Nota goes fast on a 30.7, so that is seriously quick.
And now Ayumu Iwasa gets a 1:30.6, so here we go. The ball is rolling for pole position. He backs right off, so he's going to go push, cool, push. So Ren Sato is on purple sector 1, personal best sector 2. This is where the fight for pole position really kickstarts. And the Nakajima driver, the lone Nakajima driver, is absolutely adamant. Third position on the grid is not going to be good enough for Ren Sato. He wants the top spot. Kakenoshi Nota goes purple in sector 1. The fight is on.
Yeah, Ren Sato was very fed up with being third yesterday. He hasn't had a front row since his very first Super Formula race back in 2022 at Fuji Speedway, as I think that's Shunkoide backing right off there. It looks like Orta's going for consecutive push laps, so different strategy from what we've seen for Ayumu Iwasa as Ren Sato crosses the line now. It's going to be a 1:31.3, so he's only going to be third again.
Again, yeah, it's really much the immortal third position, Ren Sato. Let's hope he can find something on his final lap. Here comes Kakenoshi Nota. Personal best on sector 3, but not a purple sector 3 this time. So Kakenoshi Nota looking to try and make this the perfect run into victory corner. Darts is on the curve, the back end trying to kick out, but he controls the rotation nicely down the push straight. Let's see if he can get the pole position temporarily. 130.3, that'll do. Lovely lap in the end.
Still a way away from the lap record. It's 1:29.757 from Tomoki Tajiri, set 5 years ago now. The most recent pole record to be set in Super Formula. I'm not sure it's going to go today, but Iwasa is gearing up for one more lap. Somebody under investigation for an unsafe pit release, but we don't know who. There's nothing on the timing screen to suggest. And the Yinging machine there, I think that's Sakaguchi, is it? Number 38, backing right off. Here comes Ayumu Iwasa to start his final flyer.
Yeah, he had a big amount of traffic in front of him, so that's what held him up. Fukuzumi starting his big push, but he's done a 1:34.0 to get the ball rolling. Here's Tomoki Tajiri, pole position, number 24 is his target. Personal bests in sectors 1 and 2. I think he's just got time to go for a second push lap as well. He's leaving it all to last. It's a big gamble of a strategy, but if anybody knows how to take that gamble and be calculated with it, it's the man who has more pole positions than anyone in this field, almost in history. If you take the previous Formula 3000 and Formula 2 stats into account, of course, in the modern era, he has the most. Third at the moment, though, 1:30.7. Iwasa is quicker, so now it's time to go for the final push lap. Every lap the drivers are on now is going to be their last. So what kind of push laps are we getting? Personal bests all around in Sector 1. There are no purple sectors, so I think Otta may have it here. Otta's pitted in, he can't do better than a 1:30.3. Iwasa's got 0.3 of a second to find, and he's done a 24.1 in the second sector, 23.9 in the third, so this is going to be playing with small change here for Iwasa. Here comes Shotsuboi, he's been personal best in all 3 sectors. Can he get onto the front row of the grid? Across the line, he needs a 1:30.6 minimum. 1:31, no. My goodness, well away. The Toyota's really down on power here. As Iwasa comes through on a 1:30.8, he does not improve. Tajiri may improve, but it's looking tough for him. Fukuzumi, a 1:30.9. Yamashita, 1:30.9. So the big guns really have come to play. What about Ren Sato? Toshiki Oyu, 1:30.62. He displaces Iwasa, so that's going to be an exciting race. Across the line comes Ren Sato. What can he get? 9th. My goodness me. Shun Koide goes 6th and pushes Sato down to 10th. That's even worse than he was expecting. Yuta Nomura, what does he get? 1:30.9. That's going to be good enough for P9. But what about Tajiri? Will it be pole position number 24? No. 1:30.7 flat. It's Kakunoshi Ota. He gets the pole position after a fantastic lap. He had already parked it, and it's job done by a 1/4 of a second to Toshiki Oyu. That's big.
Yeah, sizable margin there for Kakunoshi Ota, who's going to be delighted that he's finally got a pole after 5 times of being second on the grid for this race. A much larger spread of lap times this time. Just simply, thank you very much. There from Kakunoshi Ota. Yeah, huge spread. Shotsuboi 1.3 seconds almost off the pace. Ren Sato as well, 0.8 off the, or 7.5 off the pace. So much wider spread, I guess, because of the damp conditions and just the general lack of grip, perhaps compared to yesterday after the rain yesterday. But Kakunoshi Ota, no such worries. Pole by 1/4 of a second from Toshiki Oyu. You can't say more than that. He is going to be one happy bunny, and I think he's going to find, I think he'll be very happy that he has Toshiki Oyu sharing the front row with him and not Ayumu Iwasa. There's a brilliant chance for Ota to extend his lead in the championship. Yeah, just simply, yeah, he got me, referring no doubt to Kakunoshi Ota there. So there we go, almost a clean sweep of best sectors for Kakunoshi Ota, only sector 3 which of course is all about the traction out of the 2 slow corners there. But it's the overall lap that counts, and that's what Kakunoshi Ota managed to do brilliantly. So think Iwasa's slightly surprised to be told by his engineer Koike-san there that the gap was as much as 0.3 of a second. Okay, it wasn't quite 0.3 of a second, but if you round it up to the nearest tenth, it is. Toshiki Oyu.
いやー、ちょっと早すぎでしょ、それ。ある程度、まとめたはまとめたけどな。
Just Oyu admitting, yeah, there's no way we could go as quickly as Orta. So I think that was a sort of a mix of relief and frustration because, of course, Toshiki Oyu always wants to be the fastest man in this particular championship, and he has shown that he's capable of it in the past, but this time he has to give second best to Kakanori Shinota, but still a big improvement on what he managed yesterday.
And certainly Toshiki Oyu, fastest Toyota.
Yes.
That's a big statement when you consider that Toms are obviously the team to beat. But how about this for a stat? Sasha Fenestraz and Shota Tsuboi, neither of them starting this race later this afternoon in the top 10. My goodness.
I think Sato's saying we peaked too early with the tyres. I think he was. It's as much about the strategy in terms of the tyre warm-up as it is anything else. I think that's why we're seeing this slightly unusual order, and clearly Ren Sato feels they didn't get the best of it.
Miserable day for Nakajima as well. Ren Sato and Igor Fraga, neither of them starting in the top 10 either. This is going to be a mad race this afternoon. We've got Ota and Oyu on the front row. Not bad at all for a DJ, right? Iwasa and Najiri on the second row for Mugen. They're going to be hard-hitting from the outset. Sakaguchi, great to see both Ingings in the top 5. And Shun Koide, again, great work from the 3-bond team in P6. Let's hear from Shun Koide.
よかった。いやー、ありがとう。まだこれで完成ではないけど、とりあえず、無事に出てよかったです。Q1 の感じからいけば、この順位は悪くないのかなと思います。一応頑張ります。
Little thank you message and words of encouragement. I think Koide will be happy to prove that yesterday was no fluke, basically, because of course that was the best ever result for 3-bond racing in its relatively short history. But to back that up with P6 today, that's a good effort by Shin Koide.
3番手となりましたのはチーム無限オートバックス岩佐歩夢選手です。ライバルたちとの、ライバルが別次元の走りだったっていう無線の中で、いやそんなことはないっていうふうに否定もされておりましたけれども、ご自身の走り振り返っていかがですか。
いやよく3番手にとどまられたなっていうぐらいのちょっと状況で Q2 はQ1 から Q2 に向けてと、あとも昨日からのさらなる改善にセットアップ面でちょっと挑んだんですけど、正直なところうまくいきませんでした。はい、ただこの順位にとどまられているというのは自分たちのベースのパフォーマンスが高いことを示していると思いますし、本当にこれで3番手だったらレースは結構いけるんじゃないかなっていう雰囲気もあるので、もちろんね、外してしまったことはポール取れなかったことはネガティブというか失敗の一つですけど、しっかりとこの順位から決勝は優勝目指していきます。もちろんです。はい。やります。
わかりました。ありがとうございます。そして続きましてお姿あちらにございます。はい。予選2番手となりましたのは大湯俊樹選手。新幹線のような速さでした。
いや、今日はイノシシでしたね。新幹線にはなれなかったな。はい。
ご自身の予選のいろいろ振り返っていただいていかがでしょうか。
そうですね。予選としてはうまく決めきれたなっていう感じはありつつ、昨日がちょっと不甲斐ないというか、ちょっとねちゃんとタイヤを作動させられなくて、でタイム出せなかったので、今日その無念をチームと一緒にいろいろ改善して、ちょっとねコンディションとしては難しいコンディションでしたけど、しっかりまとめきることができたなっていうふうに思います。
フロントローからのスタート、ズバリご覧に向けた気合改めて一言お願いします。
はい、昨日はねちょっと何にもできなかったんで、今日はいろいろ荒らしたいと思います。はい、いろんな人にこうアタックをして、抜いていく、各社にね負けないように頑張りたいと思います。
わかりました。応援に期待しています。お疲れ様でした。さあそして続きましては
is coming
は
to get
い、
you.
第2戦見事ポールポジション獲得しました。今日は2番手じゃないですよ。ドコモチームダンデラインレーシング大高黒新選手、おめでとうございます。
はい、ありがとうございます。
はい、ご自身の走り振り返っていかがでしょうか。
はい、車もすごく良くて、昨日も本当にポール取れる、車をチーム用意してくれてたんですけど、少し自分なりに改善点もあって、今日はそれをうまくはめられたかなと思いますし、やっとこの茂木で2位しか取ったことなかったんで予選は、はい、初めてポールが取れて嬉しいですね。はい。
コンマ0.25ほどぶっちぎって決めたみたいです。
いや、なんか僕だけ早くアタック終わっちゃってずっとここで待ってて、最内にいるかなぐらいだったんですけど、タイムも何も聞いてなかったんで、はい、ここで待ってて3位以下に落とされたらすごい恥ずかしいなと思いながらここで待ってましたけど、はい、ポールになれてよかったです。はい、
昨日は少ないチャンスの中でもズバッと抜いて大いに会場を沸かせてくれました。午後に向けた意気込みをお願いします。
そうですね、昨日はあまりレースをしっかりファンの皆さんに見せられなかったんで。今日はしっかりこのドライのコンディションで思いっきり皆さんに楽しんでもらえるレースができたらいいなと思います。はい、よろしくお願いします。
はい、それでは皆さんどうぞ大きな拍手をお送りいただきたいと思います。トップポジションドコモチームダンデラインレーシング大高黒新 Congratulations!
Only the second pole of his Super Formula career.
And of course, the 3 points that go with it. So before we even start the race, he's extended his lead in the championship by 2 points to Ayuma Iwasa, who got 1 point for being third on the grid. Behind the top 6, Nido Fukuzumi, almost the best grid position for Docomo Business. Well, no, it is the best grid position for Docomo Business Rookie, isn't it? Because P7. So very good work indeed. Kakuno Shinota, Toshiki Oyu, front row. Ayuma Iwasa and Tomoka Najiri, second row lockout for Team Mugen. Then Sakaguchi and Koide. Fukuzumi, the best ever result for the team. Genti Mashita, P8, the circuit specialist. Yuta Nomura, top 10, along with Zach O'Sullivan for Team Impul. And then come the scalps. Ren Sato and Shotsu Boy down on the 6th row of the grid. Boy, are they going to have a race to fight back. Fenestraz 13, Fraga 14. So Toms and Nakajima occupying rows 6 and 7. Then Matsushita, Rikuto and Kamui Kobayashi, no relation, even though they're teammates. Makino way down in 18th. From Seitan Nanaka, Roman Stanek, Luke Browning and Ukisa Sahara, the Condos. And then Charlie Wirtz and Juju Noda. Very tough race in prospect for us. But for Toms and Nakajima, it's going to be the toughest race of all. Neither car from those two teams starting in the top 10. This is going to be tough.
Just makes for a fascinating race, doesn't it? In terms of having some guys lower down the grid who clearly have the potential. Is that where Suboi lost out?
Yeah,
I think it is.
That'll be why Suboi didn't get a faster lap time. He had almost exactly the same snap Charlie Wirtz did. Let's have a look again.
Wasn't a great exit out of the right-hander there. Wow, yes. The difference was that he somehow kept it out of the gravel with his lightning reflexes. Obviously, a lot more experience behind the wheel than young Charlie Wirtz. But yes, that will be why his final lap time was so disappointingly slow, 1.3 seconds off the pace. So Toms has always struggled at Motegi, and I remember speaking to Suboi saying, hope the new track surface is going to change things. It's going to be like a whole new track that everybody has to kind of relearn. And there's a certain Takuma Sato in the VMAX pit. So we have our two-time Indy 500 winner in the house, hoping to go for a third this year at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, of course supporting Yuta Nomura at VMAX Racing.
And of course, the way that Yuta Nomura is going at the moment, there's every chance we could be talking about him in one of the top teams next year. Not to take anything away from BMAX, but of course, with the high pressure intensity that's on Mugen and Dandelion's drivers, it's going to be fascinating to see if we could well see Yuta Nomura in one of the top teams next year. Honda have got some spaces potentially coming up, but it might not be until 2028, unless, of course, Nomura's spectacular rookie season warrants some changes. We'll get to talk about that a little bit more, I guess, in the build-up to the race later. But certainly, for the moment, Dandelion are on top with their man Kakunoshin Ota in pole position. Toshiki Oyu are going to bring Toyota into the fight on the front row of the grid. Fascinating race. Couldn't even begin to predict, Jamie, who's going to get the win.
Yeah, well, Ota will certainly fancy his chances for the top spot because he had the pace yesterday in the wet. Will he have the pace in the dry? I'm really excited to see what Toshiki Oyu can bring to the table as well from P2 because we haven't seen him on the front row since he was driving for TGM Grand Prix back in 2023. That feels like a long time ago already, but certainly any of the top 3 drivers, I think, even looking further down, there's got to be some guys with their eyes on big results, and you never know what can happen with the safety car. We should get a proper race with a proper variation in strategy. It's all to play for. Can't wait to see who comes out on top.
That's your lot for qualifying. Kakano Shinoda's on pole from Oyu, Iwasa and Najiri. Toms and, of course, Nakajima out of the top 10. Get ready for drama this afternoon.
タイムセルムーンパレス。